I'm Jelinko. I'm the director of the feature film Guild from Finland, and I'm basically representing the film at the festival. Well, Guild, as I like to call it, is a psychological thriller, but it's, I would call the genre artsploitation. So it uses a lot of exploitation elements, but puts it into a highly stylized and artistic, abstracted environment and storytelling. It tells a story of a guy who infiltrates a human trafficking ring in order to find his sister, who's been probably a victim of them, but then ends up, of course, committing all the nasty things that were probably committed against his sister, and thus he has to sort of hide in his obsession for the search, to force himself to degrade his own morality in order to find the sister, to the point where when he would find her or there would be some sort of solution, he can't let go anymore. But the film itself relies very little on the story, and it's more of an audiovisual interpretation of the mind of the main character and how his morality erodes and how his obsession grows. It's full of sort of moody and hallucinogenic elements that kind of depict his mindset instead of telling a direct story, and it leaves a lot up to the audience to interpret those. We had an amazing crew, so every day was a highlight, and the cast as well. I mean, we had an operating budget, I mean pure cash, of $15,000 approximately. Everything else was, I mean, we didn't get any cash from sponsors. We got some equipment, food, transportation, everything, no cash from them. So it was all on volunteer basis. Finland is sort of a close second to all of Scandinavia. They're trying to get up there, but there is a little bit of a shyness in that sort of risk-taking that the other Scandinavian countries have done in funding projects. They sort of they have limited, for example, the top budget, the maximum budget for domestic features to 3 million euros, which is not enough to do anything well. But it ensures that you can sort of divide. You have a steady influx of a steady number of movies from the annual funding, because all the funding comes from, or most of the funding for any movie comes from the state. And everything, except with the exception of the biggest filmmaking countries in Europe, the smaller countries are all operating on a state-funded filmmaking fund. Every country has their own versions, but for example in Finland it's a Finnish Film Foundation, which is funded by the gambling of Finland, which is totally state-run. So gambling money funds all the movies, and about 75 to 80% of the total budgets of movies come from the state-run Finnish Film Foundation. I was telling the other filmmakers that it's a very odd sensation to walk around in a US city, because I watch so many Hollywood movies, and so all I know of the US is from movies. But I watch a lot of movies, so it's strangely really familiar, but at the same time I'm feeling such a stranger here, and it just doesn't add up. But it's interesting. Every experience that sort of doesn't add up makes you think more about and analyze the environment more, so it's just an interesting experience. What Hollywood does best is storytelling. It's just the flow of cinematic storytelling in Hollywood movies is just on a level of its own. There's just nothing like it anywhere in the world, I think. And how to get a real grab on the feelings of the audience and how to influence them in one way or the other. But on the other hand, I think it's also not a fair comparison because the budgets are just insanely different. And whereas in Hollywood they might shoot a scene in 5 different ways, almost no European country can do that. The decision has to be made of what is the mood and attitude of the characters before you even shoot the first shot of any scene, and then you stick to it, and then you can maybe adjust it a little bit in editing, but that's just a minor adjustment, whereas in a lot of Hollywood movies they have 5 totally different versions of the relationships of the people, and that's an amazing difference in choice that you can make in editing. Well, my favorite movie is Short Bus. It's by John Cameron Mitchell. It's his second feature. And it's basically, I think, for me, it's a celebration of sexual diversity. To me, it always meant that when I first saw it, it was the first movie, and it still is, in my life that I cry at the end of out of happiness. Because it's just such a joyous, freeing crescendo at the end of the movie because it's really about accepting yourself.